Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. Shem Egan Shir I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita on Birkas, Hatorah, Shavuos, and Shavuos. Birkas, Hatorah questions. We're exclusive sponsoring a shir. Call Egan Shir at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rabbi Smith.
My sister Hoya, someone was woke up late that morning. He was just married. He was going to daven at 9:30 or later, and his shver pulled up with a car. Come, I'll take you to Kailo. The shver assumed he's going to Kailo, so he decided to play along. Okay, drop me off by the Kailo. But then the shver started talking to him and learning, and he said, "No, what do you think?" And he had to listen and respond to learning. And he asked afterwards, was he wrong by learning before Birkas Hatorah? Because he was holding before Birkas Hatorah. And the truth is, this question comes in many forms, as we'll see today. But the issue really is, Avodah is a mitzvah and Pasha is a mitzvah d'oraisa Birkas Hatorah. But is there an issur to learn before Birkas Hatorah? Another example, the girls or even younger boys, where they typically daven and say Birkas Hatorah in yeshiva, and one morning they wake up early to learn for a test. They're learning. Are they mechuyev to say Birkas Hatorah then, or as long as you say it once a day? In other words, when a person is found in a makom she'eina naki, a makom betunaf, where there's tzaya, which is a violation of the pasuk of Hayam Achnecha Kadosh, it's a d'oraisa to learn in a makom she'eina naki. So there's no heta, I have to learn and I'll worry about it later. It's so important to be in a place that's clean that it's better not to learn than learn in a makom betunaf. That's pashut. The question is the same regarding learning before Birkas Hatorah. Is it a package deal that the bracha is matir the learning, so then in our case he can't learn before Birkas Hatorah? Or maybe, who said makom betunaf is a pasuk? Who said that Birkas Hatorah asks the learning? And this is very challenging because, believe it or not, a simple question like this, it's not mefurish to my knowledge in Gemara or Rishonim or even in Poskim. So you have to sort of improvise, and let's think a little bit. Where do we find, or do we find, that a bracha actually asks doing something before a bracha? So that's simple. Brachos lamed hey, it's asa to have ana mi'olam hazeh b'lei bracha. V'chol hanena ki'ilu mal, and Rashi says ki'ilu mal b'kotshei from hektish. So what do we see from here? That there's a mitzvah to make a bracha birchas hanenen, to the extent that it's also to eat before the bracha. In fact, there's a famous marsha in Psachim Daf Kuf Beis and Kivega and Brachos Yud Beis quotes it, that when someone has a suffix bracha, he came to the morning, he's a little tired, he's not sure he made a shakel on his cup of coffee. So we all know, suffix bracha is a hakol. Drink without a bracha. So the marsha and Kivega quotes it, not true. That only works by Birkas HaMitzvah. If you're not sure you made a bracha on a mitzvah, so then you could do the mitzvah without a bracha. But to eat without a bracha, that could be a suffix issur, suffix ezel. So look how much the bracha is mata the achila. Now lemaisa we paskin in Shulchan Aruch in a few places, suffix bracha the hakol even goes on birchas hanenen, and the pshat is pashut. Because if there's no חיוב to making a bracha, because suffix bracha is the hakol, suffix daban lahakol, there's no issur. That's why an oinen le'alechem, who doesn't make a bracha, is allowed to eat. He can't do issurim. How could he eat without a bracha? What about the issur of neneh? Teretz says if there's no חיוב, there's no issur. But one thing we see regarding birchas hanenen, yes, there's an issur to eat without a bracha. So now the question is, maybe that applies as well to Birkas Hatorah. Maybe we could even say more than that. Because Lamaisa Birkas Hatorah, the first bracha certainly is quite clear that it's a Birkas HaMitzvah. Asher kitshanu mitzvayse v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei soira. You can't get a better Birkas HaMitzvah than that. What's the halacha regarding doing a mitzvah without a bracha? So the emes is, this is tricky, because we do know that we have many situations, do the mitzvah without a bracha. L'mashal, suffix netilas yadayim, suffix tefilas kalim, sukkah, the mitzvah, the halach is, sit in the sukkah, no bracha. So we see that it's possible to do a mitzvah without a bracha. But that's only when there's no other choice. Let me tell you an unbelievable marshal. Marshal in the Tshuva Siman Samaches and the Taz in Tov Reish Samaches quotes it. Why don't we make an early Shmini Atzeres? You can't make an early Pesach or Sukkot or Shavuos, but Shmini Atzeres, what's wrong? So the Marshal makes an incredible cheshbon. Because if you're going to make an early Shmini Atzeres, so it's 7 o'clock and Shkia is 8 o'clock, and you're going to, what are you going to do about sitting in the Sukkah? So Avadi, you have to sit in the Sukkah, because Mamanashach, Shmini Shana Rabbah and Shmini Atzeres sit in the Sukkah. But what do you do about the bracha? If you're going to make a Kiddush al Shmini Atzeres and make a Leisha Basukkah, to Tartu the Sasri. So don't make a bracha. Zok the Marshal, and I quote, Issa Avain Godelu the Goizel HaBracha Umoyel. For you to make a situation, put yourself in a situation, make early Shmini Atzeres, sit in the Sukkah without a bracha, and really mechuyev to, and again I quote, Avain Godel the Goizel HaBracha. So what do we see? You want to make early Yom Tiv, it's a mitzvah to Sefes Yom Tiv. But if you're going to end up going below bracha, that's no good. Now, what's the chilek? Pasha. If the halacha says yitful below bracha or sit in the sukkah below bracha, that's fine. But you make a matzav, you have to make a mitzvah without a bracha, das teig nicht. So maybe that applies to Birkas Torah as well. To go and learn without Birkas Torah is an amein gadol. But wait, we could do a little better. Because Lamaisa, there is a different category of brachos, and that we don't find there's an issur of hana without a bracha. And that's what we call Birkas HaShachar. We make a bracha, pekech ivrim. But you don't have to make it as soon as you open your eyes and have hana from your eyes. You put on shoes, and that's the bracha sheslikot tzarki. But the minig is, you put on shoes in at home, and you make Birkas HaShachar in the shul. So we see regarding Birkas HaShachar, Birkas Hanen Haidah, there's no issur of enjoying the world before the bracha. So now the question is, we just pointed out something extraordinary. Birkas Shevach Vaidah, you're allowed to have a no without a bracha. You can make it later, once a day. Birkas HaMitzvah Avain Gadol. Birkas Nanin is Ma'al. What is Birchos HaTorah? So a lot has been written, but basically, one thing all agrees. The main bracha, what the Gemara in Brachos, Daf Yud Aleph, calls the bracha Ma'ula, is the Asher Bach Habanu. Asher Bach Habanu, Rashi Kamat Beferish says that is a Birchos Haidah. Because Rashi asked, why is Asher Bach Habanu Ma'ula Sheba Brachos? What's wrong with the other two? Nothing wrong. But what makes it special? Sheyesh b'haidah la'makoim v'kilis l'Torah uli Yisrael. It's meshabeach this trio, this Yisrael v'Rais v'kuchabrichu chadu. So it's kamat beferish that Asher Bach Habanu is a Birchos Haidah. In fact, the famous Rabbi Chaim Brisker, that is, and really the Minchas Chinuch writes this in Mitzvah Taf Lamed, that the reason why Nashim make a bracha Birchos HaTorah, because it's a bracha on the Chefetz Shel Torah. It's not an abstract thought. It's a Birchos Haidah on the Torah. So no doubt about it, Asher Bach Habanu is a Birchos Haidah. According to that, it's a bretnisht. You could taka learn first and make a bracha later. Just like you put on shoes first and make a bracha later. But the problem is, the first bracha, Asher Tzvanu, L'asik L'Besoyra, is definitely a Birchas HaMitzvah. In fact, the Chayodam in Klal Hey, and this was Adam, Sif Cotton Hey, he says, where did Chazal get the right to be mechayiv a person to make a Birchas HaMitzvah on Tefillin and Sukkah and all the mitzvahs? Where'd they get that from? Zok the Chayodam, they got it from Birchas HaTorah. Because that's what we find in the Midaraisa, there's a Birchas HaMitzvah. So he's clearly identifying Birchas HaTorah as a Birchas HaMitzvah, which makes a lot of sense. So according to that, you run into Avain Gadol to learn before Birchas HaTorah, just like we saw from the Marshal. Now, the next point, what about the bracha of Harevna? Now, whether you consider Harevna as part of Alasik B'Yisrael or not, but it's definitely a bracha for itself. What is the nature of the bracha of Harevna? So, Lamaisa, the Levush in the beginning of Mem Zayin, Ma'oid tzarech adam lizar, to say Birkas HaTorah with kavana, laharai she'atorah hi chashuva be'einav, v'nena mimenu, k'may shemevorech al kol ha'na'osav. It seems that the Levush is identifying Birkas B'harevna as a Birkas Hanena. The Rav in also Mem Zayin Aleph, so you have to have kavana and say the bracha b'simcha. Yotzei mi'akol ha'noyis shebe'olam. And this is not so hard to understand. For Ben Torah knows that the famous Rabbi in Hatorah, that even though we have a klal mitzvah is lav lahanis nitnu, when it comes to Torah is given to have anah. The famous Eglei Tal and the Akdama, that really the ikka mitzvah is to be sasum sameach, and you're supposed to enjoy learning. But this is not stam gezogt. I'll tell you a dava pella. Let's say you borrow someone's item, and there was this happened, and it got lost. So we know shayol shekol no shaloi. You have to pay for it, right? You're getting hana for free. You're not paying rent. You have to pay for it. Let's say you borrowed a sefer, and an this happened. Zoktik tzois, and this is a siman ayin beis. If caught in yotzei, you're not chayiv to pay. He's a shayol, he's chayiv an einsim. But what's this for? A shayol is chayiv an einsim calling no shaloi. You borrowed a sefer, mitzvahs lav lahanis nitnu. You're not having hana. Tainat in is what are you talking about? Torah is lahanis nitnu. So kol shaloi. So according to the yotzei, according to the Sivas, you have to pay when you borrow a sefer because la halacha, not just a musa deher, Torah lahanis nitnu, and that's the bracha of the second bracha of Arevna. So now we just came up with a nice conclusion. Are you allowed to learn before Birkas HaTorah? So if the only bracha would be the bracha of Asher B'chabon or Birkas Haidah, you can learn first. But since it's also a Birkas HaMitzvah and a Birkas HaNenen, it makes sense that one definitely should not learn before Birkas HaTorah. But we could do a little better than that. And that is basically a Beferish Gemara. The Gemara in the Darm Pei Aleph quotes the Pasuk and the Navi. No one knew why there was a Churban Abayis. They asked the Chachamim, the Nevi'im, Malachi Ashares, until the Baruch Shalom had to disclose the reason. Al Ozam Esterasi she'ei mevarchim b'Torah tchila. Frag the Rabbeinu Yoina, the Ran on the page quotes the Rabbeinu Yoina. You're talking about a Dar Deya. No one knew what the Aveira was. You know, a typical Dar, they know exactly what's wrong. So up to Rabbeinu Yoina, it must be Vadai oiskim hayu b'Torah tamid. How the Rabbi of uns gesagt. Not just learning Torah, but oiskim, asik, tamid. So where'd they go wrong? Shalai baruch b'Torah tchila. Zok the divrei chamudais in brachos perik aleph ois ayin tes. Avada they said Birkas HaTorah. It's one of the Taryag mitzvahs, like most Rishonim. But they weren't makbet to say it right away. Let's first hear a good chid. Let me hear a good chid. Oh, okay. I get around to it, I'll make Birkas HaTorah. The Churban was Tchila. They said Birkas HaTorah, but not first. So now we have a very compelling reason that Taka it's awesome to learn before Birkas HaTorah. We don't want to be a victim of what they were, of their problem in the time of the Churban. But it could be, La Halacha, there's another reason why it's awesome to learn before Birkas HaTorah. And this basically is attributed to Rabbi Chanan, not in his Sefer, but in the Dvar Avram, the Kovner of Shuvas, Chelik Aleph, Siman Tezayim. He quotes what he heard from his Mechutin, Rabbi Chanan, the following suggestion. The Gemara in Brachos, Daf Tezvav, says, a cheresh hamadav v'einish shemeya should not take off truma. Why? What's wrong with a cheresh? So, because he really can't hear the bracha that he's saying, and could be he's not yotzei with the bracha. So it's like he's being toirim, taking off truma b'loi bracha. However, l'maisa, since bracha is only midrabanan, so it's not ma'akiv if he's toirim. So a cheresh that's toirim, truma say truma. Zoktet the Rosh, and this is printed in the bracha mishalesh. The Sefer bracha mishalesh is on Masech the bracha that says vav. Had you had a bracha d'oraisa and you didn't make a bracha, then it's ma'akav the mitzvah. Because the only reason why a cheresh is b'diavad if he took off truma is chal, because the bracha is not makiv, because only Dabbanim. But had you had a bracha deraisa, and you didn't make the bracha deraisa, you're not yotzei the mitzvah as well. It's a package deal. Zok Rabbi Chanan, I have a perfect example of this. Birkas Hatorah like Roy Vishayim is a deraisa. So if you learn without a bracha deraisa, could be you're not yotzei the mitzvah of limud Hatorah. The davar chiddush shaloi shamanu Zok Rabbi Chanan. But the cheshbon is compelling. Because if you have a bracha deraisa on the learning, and again, this is the big if you hold that Birkas is deraisa, it's a big machlokes Rishonim. Some Svarim say, Roy Rishonim hold it's a chiv deraisa. And Svarim Achreinim say, Roy Rishonim hold it's only Dabbanim. Okay, that we know. But at least we have a precedent that if you learn with a Birkas Torah, you're not yotzei the mitzvah. And then I saw that Rabbi Zalman and Mincha Shloima Aleph Tzadik Aleph quotes Rabbi Pesach Frank that it's the same cheshbon. Because since Birkas is deraisa, when he quoted the Gemara in Masechta Brachos. I then saw an even bigger chiddush. This is the Tel Merav and his Tshuva Seif Magos Markochim. He has a shayla. Someone woke up late, and it's precisely a minute and a half till the end of the second Zman Krishma. If he's going to say Birkas Torah first, he'll miss the Zman. Zok the Tel Merav, but you have no choice. Because if you say Krishma without Birkas Torah, it's a mitzvah b'aveira. You're learning without Birkas Torah, and he proved that's also a mitzvah b'aveira. And he says, so oy bazah, you're not gaining. Mitzvah b'aveira ain't a mitzvah. So what you end up with? No mitzvah and a plain aveira. Why do that? So what's the eitzah? He says you have to improvise quickly. Maybe make just the first bracha shebacha banu and say the first pasuk or parsha of Krishma, and that's the ikar deraisa. But his assumption is shocking. He's not only saying you're not allowed to learn Birkas Hatorah, but he says to the extent if you learn Birkas Hatorah, it's a mitzvah b'aveira. And that seems something similar to Rabbi Chanan. But what's really interesting, Rabbi Shlomo Klugen Elef HaShloim is Simon Shin Chaf Aleph, not talking about our shaila per se, but he has the following. Someone by the Seder night ate matzah, but made a Birkas mitzvah, but didn't make Hamoitzi Lechem in Aretz. So Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, you're not yotzei the mitzvah matzah. Because since without making a Birkas Hanan and he was Mo'al, it's mitzvah b'aveira. So here we see that Lamaisa, it's not so shocking to say if someone learns without Birkas HaTorah, he was not yotzei the mitzvah. Now, of course, that's dependent on the fact that Birkas is deraisa, but Lamaisa, this would explain why we devoted Bez Hashem a whole shir about it, but it's so much in the Paiskim. What is mutter before Birkas HaTorah? Lamashal, can you say slichas? Can you say krishma like I just spoke about? Can you say telening? Can you say tehillim? I mean, there's so many shaylas that are discussed. What is mutter before Birkas HaTorah? Had there been no issa, so why are you spending so much time figuring it out? So yes, there is a reason to believe that it's also to learn for Birkas HaTorah. Number one, because the lashon of tchila, the Gemara in the Dorim, and now we see an halachic reason, maybe it's mitzvah b'aveira. However, I must tell you, most achrayim take strong exception to this, and I think the main svara is that no one says until the Heintig, again the B'chanan, the Tzel Merav, and the Shlomo Kluger, but this 14 seifim. 14 seifim, sorry, in Shulchan Aruch, Sim Mem Zayin, all the halachas of Birkas HaTorah, and there's no mention that you're not allowed to learn before Birkas HaTorah, which is probably the most common shayla. Now, I do know, and this, again, we have to be clear, everybody is mohida. Tzorach li zah ba ma'oid in Birkas HaTorah, like the Mechaba begins. Zok the Mishnah, what does it mean, zah ma'oid? Don't learn before Birkas HaTorah. Because that's the reason of the Churban, that is the Tchila. Don't forget what the Marshal says, Avain Gadol, do a mitzvah without a bracha. That is the given. But let's say it comes Lamaisa. You can't say Birkas HaTorah. For whatever reason, we'll soon see someone's talking to you and you can't excuse yourself, or you have a suffix, or it's Shavuos morning and there's no one to maybe moitzi you. All these sreikas that we have, if you have no alternative, we're not going to say it's also to learn. Tainit, the Dvar Avram himself, he says, had it been one pasuk, say Birkas HaTorah, and then learn. So it's a package deal. But the Birkas HaTorah is in Hazinu. Mitzvah Limud HaTorah in Parashas Eikev, whatever, Barta Bom. So how do you make it that one's mark of the other? It's two mitzvahs deraisa. And the way he puts it, my shait lezu ma'akev. It's two different mitzvahs. The Mamshik, on his own, he says, if someone can say Birkas HaTorah, so that's bad enough. But he shouldn't learn Achta too. You can't do one mitzvah, do what you could do. And again, it's not a stira to the Tchila and Yizah B'Ma'oid and Ovain Gadol, because the same Ovain Gadol that we know, but what does Halachas Amein say? Do B'lai Bracha. Put on talis and tefillin now, make the bracha later, because you're a milah of whatever, whatever the shaila is. So if you have a choice, tzarech lizah b'ma'oid, and that's the churban habayis tchila, and that's oven gadol. But if it comes lemaisa, what to do? It seems most poskim take this approach. It can't be an issur to learn, because if it's two separate mitzvahs, why does one share the other? And this is Reb Chaim's briskus psak, it's quoted in Tshuvas on Haggis, Chelik Dal, Ametaf Chavav, that is no issur to learn before Birkas HaTorah. There's a mitzvah to say the bracha, true. And in Chelik Hey, Kuf Samach, Rav Sternberg has a story, Rebel Yibarach Kamai, there was the Mir Rav, came to Brisk, and I don't know the logistics, but Lamaisa, Reb Chaim started talking to him and learning. And he said very innocently, I didn't yet say Birkas HaTorah. I guess he traveled, whatever the story was. So Reb Chaim said, there's nothing wrong with learning for Birkas HaTorah. And a little while later, Bitzel Aponovich, one of the Gedolim in his times, had the same psak from his own. So it seems this is the accepted minig. Mincha Shloima that I mentioned after Kolam Tzi Pesach Frank, he says, Loi Matzinu, that Chazal asid learning before Birkas HaTorah. In other words, eating a little bit before bracha is Beferish Gemara. That's it. Learning in a makam she'einai naki is a pasuk in the Torah. But this, you have to find a raya. Shlomo Hayman once said, "Tzvamachen the Gemara daf merhaban Gemara." You have to show me a Gemara that it's awesome. So here, this is the same story. You want to say tzarach zamaoid, right? You want to say tchila, right? But let's say you can't. Let's say for the next hour you have a suffix bracha. Someone's coming in an hour to moitzi you. So you're going to battle for an hour? Leishamanu. The Rabbi Yashiv in Kaivis Chuvas Aleph Tes, he says, if you can't make Birkas HaTorah, Avadi should learn, Adarabba, at least do one mitzvah. The B'tzei Chochma in Chelik Aleph Siman has a beautiful tshuva, Mamish the Shaila that the Tel Rav had, where someone was late to this man, and what should he do? Krishma without Birkas HaTorah, or don't do anything? And he says, Avada, you should say Krishma. Now, one side he says, he bases it on the Buchacha and member of Tes, that the Chiyuv is once a day Birkas HaTorah. Say it when you want. Now, that's a Chiddush. But he probably was holding that the primary Chiyuv is like Birkas HaTorah. In the Tikkunim, in the back of the Sefer, it's Amud Kuf, Pei Zayin, he says, Bemes Tekash not a Shaila. Ki loy matzina b'shum makom. That Chazal asid learning like Birkas HaTorah. Again, Tchila is right, and you have to do it. But if a person can't, what should he do? Learn and make the bracha later. So these two are not a stira. When a person has an option, say Birkas HaTorah, but if there's no option, Avada, one should learn. Now this Lamaisa is the point that, again, that there's no issur per se of learning before Birkas HaTorah. Now let's apply this specifically. So let's talk about our younger man, he was very late, and Ishver is talking to him and learning. So Lamaisa, this is a situation I'm going to tell him, you have to say Birkas HaTorah. I mean, unless it's a Gemara. That's the churban. Now, Lamaisa, you have a shalom bayis issue with Ishver, okay, you have to shots that up. If you tell him, I didn't say Birkas HaTorah yet, he'll say, you mean you daven on Birkas HaTorah? He goes, no, I didn't daven yet. So if you think that it's quite a brias at stake, that's your decision. But a person has to be careful, say Birkas HaTorah, before learning, especially if he's going to answer back. Now, I'm going to say, so you know what, I'll just be quiet. I won't say a word. And the Mechaber says, no Birkas HaTorah and Hira. But that's wrong. Because Halachas Ketanis and Chelik Beis, Kuf Nun Tes, says, Hira means there's nothing but Hira. But if someone's talking to you, So not that you need to lum this Hashemeika Oina, but there's a factual dibur, and that's Mechayah Birkas HaTorah. Now we'll soon see if Shlomo Kluger is Mekel and Elif Chashleim Simlam and Hey, but most Paiskim say that the Halachas Tanis was correct. The only Patur is pure hearer. Once there's a dibur is Mechayah, even Yenim's dibur. So this you have to know if it's Taka Kvayt Abriyas or Shalom Bayit, but in the Yisrael we shouldn't play around and say, okay, I'll say it later. That's the wrong attitude. Someone had a shaila. He was driving, he was in a car, going to shul, and he had a 15-minute drive, and he forgot to say Bרכas HaTorah. And he wanted to talk or learning, or listen to a shir, whatever it was. But he's very makbid to say Bרכas HaTorah standing. And you can't stand in a car unless you have an open deck. So he decided to wait till Bרכas HaTorah till he got to shul to keep his hiddur. So there are two mistakes. First of all, most poskim hold there's no hiddur standing versus sitting. But even if there is a hiddur, but what's your hiddur? Learning 15 minutes without Bרכas HaTorah? It has to be a reason. I can't, I have a suffix, no one's being might see me, but just to neglect it because of a chumrah, that's a misplaced chumrah. Someone came late to a shir. So he decided, I don't want to miss more, I'll hear the shir now, and I'll say Bרכas HaTorah later like I do Birkas HaShachar. Very poor judgment. Al zeh of the Haaretz. That's the Churban Abayis. That's the Tzarech Zamaid. If there's a position that there's no choice, we'll soon see many examples. Then you learn. But because of a hiddur to push a Bרכas HaTorah, that's wrong. Another question. This is negayah primarily to girls, but even to young boys also. Whether girls or boys, but if they say Bרכas HaTorah in school, so that's fine. You're allowed to eat breakfast or Bרכas HaTorah. But let's say one morning they wake up early to study for a test, Chumash, Shalach, whatever it is, so they have a Xiyav to Bרכas HaTorah. Girls, so it's a Mechaba in the last Sif in Mem Zayin, Nashim Mevarcha is Bרכas HaTorah. So Lamaisa, I saw the Shevet HaKasi and Chayil Gimel, Amud Zayin, in fact he even adds, even if they'll be careful not to say a word, but Ksiva, if they're writing, HaKoisib B'Divei Torah Tzarech Levarach. Now his shaila is about a girl, but the same thing is with a boy. The Rabbi that has the opportunity to mechanech his talmidim at that age, did you all say Birkas HaTorah before you learned? Make sure that you don't learn without Birkas HaTorah. I saw a beautiful sefer, the sefer Birkas HaTorah Kalchosa. He has a shaila about learning with a friar person, a chiloini. So it could be a person giving a shir to a room full of not yet observant Yidden. So you could be certain that none of them said Birkas HaTorah. So do we say, just like the Mechaba says in two places, Kuf Samach Gimel and Kuf Samach Tes, you can't give a friar person to eat because number one, he won't wash Til Sedayim, and even if it's not bread, he won't make a bracha. So by you giving a friar person to eat, you're oiv alef neiva. Does the same apply to learning without Birkas HaTorah? So the answer is no. Because there's an issur to eat without a bracha. That's a fneiva. But there is no issur to learn per se without a bracha. Now, avada, what a person should do in that situation, say, you know what, before we start this learning Torah, we say Birkas HaTorah, I'll say it for you, just listen and say amein. And even though the Maggid Shir said it long ago, but this is the regular din of arvus, of yotzei. So he's mezaked oila. So when you could do it in a way that they won't be offended or insulted or feel intimidated or feel threatened or, whatever word you want to use. So how to do it. And whoever listens, you're lucky. But if you have a one-to-one basis, you have an irreligious relative by your Shabbos Sudim. You say, okay, let me first say Birkas HaTorah with you. He doesn't want to be told what to do. I mean, again, if he's open to the idea, it's wonderful. But if you might lose him, so we rely on the Ikad Din, there are two different mitzvahs. There's a Birkas HaTorah mitzvah, and then there's a mitzvah limud HaTorah. You're getting into an Eretz Yisrael, so typically you get into a monit and a car and a taxi, and you start telling the fella a vart, and he's listening. Oh, wow, a little bit ma'at or, right, the pintel yid. So you start, no, you have to first make Birkas HaTorah. So he gets turned off. He doesn't want to be told what to do. So you have to use your judgment, but no doubt about it, and Atakasur Bayashiv and a number of svarim of his, and Ashrei Ish, and all the svarim quote him, if it's just a speech with stories, nice stories, and Meshalim, maybe there's no chiyuv. But if you're learning with someone, a Gemara, Chumash, real Torah, l'chol hadayis, avada, try to broach the subject, let's make Birkas HaTorah, and we'll learn together. But again, here's where it's a situation that if you make him a bracha, he will be offended. then shev al tasa odif, and rely on the iked din. So there are zwei dinim. There's a mitzvah of limud Torah and a mitzvah of birkas Torah. One's not meyakev, the other. Question: a person woke up, and his problem was that he didn't say Krishma or Birkas Torah for that matter. So this, as we saw earlier, the Talmud Rav held better not say Krishma, but the Poskim assume that it's separate mitzvahs, and definitely he should say the full Krishma and make sure he makes the Zman. The emphasis when you're talking about Krishma, there's another reason to be Mekel that's come out of Beferish Mechaba in Memzai and Ches. The Mechaba says that you could be yotzei Birkas Torah with Ava Rabbah before Krishma, but you have to learn it right afterwards. And Mechaba says it's not so pashto. You could be yotzei learning afterwards with Krishma. Why is Krishma not Torah? Torah says if Krishma is Shem mitzvah, then maybe it's not Torah. So in our case, it turns out to be a kula. I'm saying Krishma to be yotzei the mitzvah, not else to limud Torah, else to kriya Shema, and that's taka. True. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah says in Simas Samaches, if you walk into the Beis HaMedrash and they're saying Shema Yisrael, say it with them, even though you didn't say Krishma yet. Why? Are you allowed to say a pasuk? This is a pasuk l'shem Krishma, l'shem Tefillah, but not l'shem Torah. So again, basically, the right way to do it, if it's shaykh, is you woke up, say at least the Asher B'Chabanu, and then say the entire Krishma before the Zman. One brach is enough? Yes. How do I know that? Because this is a mechab and kuflam betes sif test. It's really a dilemma. You finally they call you up to Aliyah, but it's pretty embarrassing. You just walked into shul and you hold before Birkas Torah, and they called you up. What do? Can't run out. So the mechab says no problem. Say the Birkas Aliyah Shabbat Banu, laying along with him, and when you finish in private, say the other brachos. So we see two things in mechaba. Number one, we see that you could say Asher B'Chabanu and be yotzei la'eis ata, and number two, the seid is not ma'akiv. You could say B'Chabanu first, the other ones later. So if someone could squeeze in Asher B'Chabanu and say the full Krishma, that would be the best thing. Now, Lamaisa, what's much more challenging, again, a person that should never be late, but he's dreadfully late, he walks in holding four Birkas Torah and they're laning. Now, you could say Krishma is a mitzvah that's not Torah. But laning is Torah. You can't slice it any other way. So what are you going to do? Now, to walk out is terrible. That's for Oiz ve'Hashem Yichlu Chas v'Shalom Shulchan Aruch Kuf Mem Vav Aleph. So Lamaisa here, to listen to laning, you say, well, it's only hearer. That's also wrong. Lamaisa, there's someone laning. In fact, there's a beautiful tshuva, Dibur Chacham Chaim, the Kerem LaDavid in Siman Yud Aleph. He says it's pashut that listening to Torah is chayav Birkas Torah. How does he know? He's not saying anything. He says, look at the Makar. What's the Makar Birkas Torah? Ki Shem Hashem Ekra. Moshe says, I'm going to tell you Torah, which is the Shem Hashem, Shmo Yisrael Kadosh Baruch Hu Zok Marsha, and you say Birkas Torah. What was the level of their learning? Not more than Shemei Ka'ina. So the original source is by Shemei Ka'ina. So listening to laning is a major problem. So if there's another minion, then Avada just, try to find the other minion. Now, don't walk out during laning. Ben Gavra Lagavra. Even Ben Gavra Lagavra now to walk out, that's only if you won't hear laning later. If you're going to hear a laning and you want to avoid a possible issur, that's the alternative. But Lamaisa, I know Rav Moshe in Chelik Aleph Kufay and Gimel says that by laning there's no chiyuv of Shemei Ka'ina. There's no chiyuv to lane, it's to listen. But there's still a problem, because as we said, I just told you from the Kerem LaDavid, without the dinim of Shemei Ka'ina, the factual kriya is mechayev in a bracha. So Lamaisa, that's for sure, if a person walks into laning, and he could say at least Asher B'Chabanu, so that's our previous eitzah. Say Asher B'Chabanu, listen to laning carefully, and after laning, or Ben Gavra L'Gav, you could say the other two brachos. Now, Reb Shlomo Kluger, I told you, does hold that a person that's listening without saying something, there's no chiyuv Birkas Torah. But it's probably a das yochid, and basically that seems to be the correct way of doing things. I'll tell you, it's almost Purim, I'll tell you a Purim treat. And this light happens. People are late for davening Purim morning, they stay up late, He walks in as they start the Megillah. Exactly. Not a second earlier. So, what does he do? Because listen to the Megillah, there's no Ben Gavra Lagavra. Until the Haman's clapping, you got a long laning. What should he do? And there's no other minion, because he is the latest in town. So, the Shlomo Zalman in the Halicha Shloima Purim Yotes Oisches, so Chiddush Pella, he says maybe you could rely on the understanding that Mikra Megillah is not Limud HaTorah. How does he know? First Gemara. Zokmar Megillah Daf Gimel Mevatlan Talmud Torah Lishmoya Mikra Megillah. So the Kasha, all the Mefarshim ask, what is Megillah Bittul Torah? What's the Lashon Hara? Mevatlan Talmud Torah for Mikra Megillah. So some say it's a Bittul Torah in the Eichus of learning, you're not harving. But the Beis Ephraim, that was the Mat Ephraim, in the Tshuva Simon Sambaches, right in the beginning, he says, since the Gemara says we don't see Hal on Purim, because Kriyasi Zuhi Hilula, so we could identify the Megillah as a Hallel. Hallel, although it's Psukim, is Torah, is Tefillah. So he says, B'shas Atchak, you can rely on that Yisoid, that it's not a Limud HaTorah. The emes the Heilige Chazanish is quoted in the Chaim Kanievsky Sefer, New Sefer Kuntras HaZichronos, that his teretz to this kasha, by the way, Batan Talmud Torah, what's the Bittul Torah? That you can have one act that has two different mitzvahs. He says, you want to say Krishma? It's a wonderful mitzvah Krishma, but it's not Talmud Torah. That's the pshat why you can't be yotzei limud with Krishma. And he says, this is pshat in the Gemara. Because if you tell me you're doing it as the mitzvah of Kriyas Megillah, so it's that mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah of Limud HaTorah. Okay, so like that, it's also very much for enfit. Taya Shaila, it could be, it's not a hypothetical question. Someone woke up early in the morning, and to his mazel, a skunk, pardon me, just sprayed. And that's the Reach Ra, that probably asks saying a bracha. And what should he do? He didn't say Birkas Torah, but until it dissipates, might take 5-10 minutes. And 5-10 minutes is a yam of time. What could he do? So here I tell you, it's interesting, achap, but the halacha is, when there's a Reach Ra she'ein lo yikah, from someone else, that's mashal afacha, the halacha is you're allowed to learn. Why are you allowed to learn? Because otherwise, what am I going to do? You know, he's mafiach, I can't learn. But in that situation, you can't make a bracha. You're allowed to learn without a bracha. So this Reach Ra she'ein lo yikah, this skunk, is another example. So here, l'chayra, he should be able to learn with the Reach, because again, it's not his fault, but he can't make a Birkas Torah. And this might be a perfect nafkamina of our case. Now, that idea, I saw in the Shevet HaKosi, he says in Chelik Gimel, Mem Gimel, he says a skunk is considered Reach Ra she'ein lo yikah, and you can learn without making a bracha. So I was thinking the Hezbollah Pashut, like we said, this Yisoid. The big question is, we have a Shavuos, and some people have it. Other times they're traveling, or I just had a shout, someone's wife was having a baby, and it went into the late night, early morning. Bekitza, what do you do when you have a suffix Birkas HaTorah? You might be chayiv, you might not be. I would like to learn now. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it. What do you do in that situation? So the emes is, when a person has a suffix Birkas HaTorah, the best eitzah, which is the chatchila gomer, is find someone that's making Birkas HaTorah and ask me yotzei with all three brachos, and then you learn afterwards. That is the chatchila. Shemei ka'oin of the Rashba is the chatchila. It's not a second-rate mitzvah. Mitzvah boy, zok the Rashba, is by listening. So if someone can be yotzei, that's great. If there's no one around, so the second eitzah, which is not as good, but also good, is basically a Gemara, and the Machab ben Siv Zayin quotes it. You could be yotzei by saying Avarabba or Avas Olam, whatever your nusach is. Now, that's a chiddush, because really, where do you see three brachos in Avarabba? But as I state in the Gemara, we makabel it. If you have a choice, then Avada, Shemei Koine, is a better choice. But the shaila is, someone's in a hospital, his wife's having a baby soon, so there's no one around to yotzei him, and he can't daven because he has to be with her. What does he do? So Lamaisa, if it's taka a real suffix, what do we say? Suffix brachos lahakol. What's the halacha with suffix Birkas HaTorah? So that's a question that's hard to answer. The pashtus of the Gemara in brachos Chaf Aleph Amar Aleph, minayin lebirkas HaTorah lefanei min HaTorah shenem Kishem Hashem Eker Hava Goydel Lekeinu. Now that pretty much sounds like Birkas HaTorah is a deraisa, and that's why many Rishonim say it's a deraisa. However, it's very easy to say no. minayin is a remez, a smachta. But Lamaisa, who said it's really a deraisa? And what's a little convincing, the Mata Yehuda, now is Simon, he says, look in Shulchan Aruch, you'll see this is right. Because the Mechaber in the end of Simon Reish Tes says there's no Chiyuv bracha midaraisa that you have to repeat it misafik other than Birkas Hamazon, which has got the same Gemara. So if Birkas Torah is deraisa, why did the Mechaber say both? The Gemara talks about benching is lachrea, Birkas Torah is lefaneh. Why did the Mechaber leave out Birkas Torah? Must be the Mechaber holds Mikid Din, it's only midrabanan like those Rishonim. Now, Lamaisa, if you want to see how challenging this question is, look at Mr. Bura Sif Katan Aleph. He has a shayla. Safik Birkas Torah, what should I do? There's no one around to invite me. He's not davening yet. What should I do? So he brings a shagas. Aryeh says that avada Birkas Torah is deraisa. Okay, maybe if you have a suffix, you have to say only one, but you must say at least one bracha. Sveika deraisa l'chumra. Good. Then he says, but the Shari Tshuva brings the K'tas Achrayim, that it's misafik lo yachs, it's only drabanan. But you can't rely on that because Harbi Shainim holds the Raisa. And also, look at the Gemara in the Dorim, how chomer is Birkas HaTorah. So he says, but the Maisa, better would be get something moitziu, or say Avarabba. But if not, listen to this, if not, maybe don't make a bracha at all. Because I just found the Mordechai quotes a Lavush, Oilas Tomid, that Birkas Torah is only drabanan. So therefore, Bavali Tzarech Lizah, L'chatchila Lastis Kain, to be yotzei with someone else. So he starts off the Raisa Vadai, ends off drabanan. So Lamaisa, no one could machri in the Shaila, but one thing I will say, this question of Safik Birkas Torah is probably unresolved. But one thing we have a little more guidance is the Shavuos Shaila, which means a person learning all night, didn't sleep, and then Alois HaShachar comes. Why is there a problem also on Alois HaShachar? Because Rabbi Tam holds that Birkas HaTorah is a chiv on a new day, even if you didn't sleep, even if you're continuously learning. So Alois HaShachar all of a sudden becomes a suffix. Now, anybody who stays up has this next question. Let's say it's Alois, a minute after Alois, and no one was moitzei me yet. The fellow that's supposed to make a bracha in the yeshiva came late. Can I learn? Do I have to stop learning? Close the Gemara? For those that go to sleep, so typically Hasidim go to sleep and daven the regular time, they have the same shaila, because they want to finish up the tikkun, and it's a few minutes after Alois, they have to stop. Or they want to, when they get home before going to sleep, they want to say Krishma, just in case they missed his man. Do you have to worry about Krishma meeting a bracha? So Bekitza, whatever you do, if you stay up a whole night, you have this shaila. Is Alois the cutter point that stop learning, stop ticking, stop Krishma? So the Magen Avram, if you've cut in your base, Rav Shechanach, Birka Yosef, Ar Chashulchan, he says, no suffix. Alois is a new chiyuv. That's Rabbeinu Tam. So even if you didn't sleep and you're learning straight, Alois HaShachar comes, you can make your own bracha. That's the chiddush of the Magen Avram. The Mishnah Berurah says, not like that. He says, Lamaisa, if the mitzvah is continuous, it goes from before Alois to after Alois, and nothing changed, the same mitzvah, don't make a bracha. And that's taka the minig in the yeshivas. Someone who did sleep makes a bracha for the oilam, or someone who goes to the Magen Avram, and Shalom al Yisrael. Now, but the question is, fine. When someone is in a yeshiva, and he's not saying his own brachos, someone's coming, but he came late. And again, 5 minutes for a whole yeshiva is a yama bittul Torah. So the Chazon Ish, quoted in Dinim Van Hagais, he says, don't stop learning. That's a situation that you have no eitzah. So if you can't make a Birkas Torah, you should also mivatal Torah, chas v'shalom. The Chazon Ish said this, Rabbi Yashiv said this. In fact, someone asked him, maybe for those 5 minutes we should say Tillim, like in between. He goes, Shavuos darf man lernen. In other words, don't hack with frumkeiten. It's krumkeiten. Why are you stopping to learn? Now, nothing wrong with Tillim, don't get me wrong, but his point was, now you're allowed to learn. Now, but this is simple in a setting where it's after Alois, the one that wants to go to sleep, he can finish off the tikkun and say Krishma, no problem. Now, the only issue is someone in a hospital, waiting again for a simcha, or whatever the situation is, or he just arrived on a flight. There are many situations that Alois came, there's no one around, and he can't daven yet. He has to get to a shul, he has to get to house tefillin, whatever the story is. So Lamaisa, this is again the halacha Lamaisa. If there's no one around, and then after Alois, although he has a suffix bracha like the Magen Avram, he should continue learning and do the best he can. Now, I once had the shaila, someone woke up early, and taka one of those heilige balibatim, they get up to learn hours before davening. Bekitza, he had a little bit of a tear in the morning, and he came to his famous, his beloved shir. He's not sure he made Birkas Torah. He's zichar chiyav, he slept the regular night. But he's not sure if he said Birkas Torah or not. That's what they call over 50 moment. So what should he do? To be yotzei with avarabba, but he's not davening, he wants to learn. An hour of learning, chazorah, he wants to learn. Daven b'chid especially. Someone being moitziim, they're all going to the shir. Maybe he's lucky after the shir, someone will walk in. But right now he has no eitzah. So this is tricky. Because if you say that it's a suffix deraisa, there's a chiyuv to make a bracha. Don't forget, here's a real chiyuv, but he's not sure if he did it. But Mr. Brewer seems to be noita, suffix derabanan, it's a suffix derabanan. So l'chayra, I think I'm right, he should take a learn and hope for the best someone comes in after the shir. So he'll be relying on the yotzei that even if he's chayiv in Birkas Torah, but he has no choice. Why should he miss an hour and a half of his learning? And if even no one comes in, he could fall to the second eitzah and avarabba. So better than tell him it's asa to learn or daven b'chidis or all these things. That's what I think. I saw that sefer Birkas says Taka he should not be saimach on this, but I think it makes more sense. Once you go to Mr. Brewer, so you have two tzan v'mekel. Safrak d'abana lahakol, so we'll assume he said it. And also, even if it's sveika deraisa, but there's no issur to learn when there's no other choice. Shavuos morning, as I told you, after Allah, some people, there's always one person that gets, I'll learn now. But that's wrong. As I told you, the Chazanish said, Rabbi Yashiv said it. But this works for both of those that are going to sleep and or are staying up. But there is two more tzaddim b'mekel Shavuos morning. And listen to this. Two gedolim were mechavan to the same Einfeld. I saw this in the Kojigul of Eretz Tzvi Simon Yotes, the Marshag in Aleph Samach Beis. They say a few minutes after Alois is not yet Vadai Chiyav Nu Bracha. Because although Midaraisa, when does a Yiddish day begin? By Alois. But we all know the Mishnah Masechta Megillah, that Chazal or Masakin, that the day begins, like by mitzvahs, by nets, by Mila, by Sukkah. Why? Because we don't want to, it might be off a few minutes. So they both say that maybe we could rely on that and say that not Alois is when the suffix begins, but Nates. That's the new halachic day. Okay, Einfeld. But then the Marshag, actually the Marshag's Ikka reason is the first reason, and this is a classic Divrei Chacham Chaim. Zok the Marshag, if you're holding Shavuos morning, you learned the whole night, and you're still learning, you want to stop learning, why? Because of the suffix Birkas Torah. So there's no reason for that. And he says a Davar Nifla. You're learning straight the whole night, and you want to learn into Alois, right? What's the Mechayiv of Bracha? Mitzad the Birkas HaMitzvah, the mitzvah is fully in effect. You didn't stop learning. Mitzad the Birkas HaNenen, again, you didn't stop. What's the only possible Mechayiv in Birkas Torah by Alois? It's the reason of the Birkas Haidah, the Beinu Tam, which is a good reason. Beinu Tam is a Beinu Tam. But by a Birkas Haidah, there's no issur of learning before the bracha. You don't make a bracha when you put on your shoes. You don't make a bracha when you open your eyes. So the only Mechayiv is Birkas Haidah, but that Mechayiv does not asa learning before. So basically, Tzvamachin, a Gemara, Dafin Haben, a Gemara, and Taka after Alois, although there's always one person, you got to stop learning. That's incorrect for many, many reasons I told you. And even in the worst scenario, it doesn't asa b'diavad. I saw in the Hilchas Yoim Yoim, that's Moshe Chakab Sefer, he has an interesting Einfeld, in Reish Samach Dalet. He says, maybe if you have a suffix Birkas Torah and you want to do something, say Asher B'chabonu B'lo Yishem HaMalchus. I call brachos Amish and Malchus ain't a bracha. So he has an Einfeld, and he says that this bracha is Kishem Hashem Eker Hava Goydel Lekeinu. The is to give Shevet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Rai, you learn out from this that there's a min zimun and saying Baruch Hu Baruch Shemoi. So who said it has to have a bracha b'Shem Malchus? In other words, we don't have a bracha deraisa other than Birkas Torah. Maybe the nature is Shevach without Shem HaMalchus is good enough. In other words, Kol brachos ein ba Shem HaMalchus ein a bracha is by a Birkas Hanenin. Okay, or the Adonish. I mean, you can't prove he's wrong, but im hayoyel lo yazi. Here's a ma'aser, a true story. Someone had just got married, and his wife wanted to daven Shavuos b'minyan. He was davening in the yeshiva, so he says, maybe come pick me up, and I'll daven with you, we'll walk home. Okay, wonderful. He said, please, I have to be on time. I got to get back in the yeshiva, before Lois, I want to hear Birkas Torah. She goes, no problem, I'll be on time. Okay, Lamais, women not always punctual. Lamais, they walked into the yeshiva after the person said Birkas Torah. So basically, he missed Birkas Torah Shavuos morning. He was terribly distraught. The Shalom Bayis was, a little on the edge. But she said, you know what? I have a great idea. I slept till now. I'll be yotzei Birkas Torah. Now, this is too much for him. But she's right. L'chayra. The Mechaber, the end of Simon Mem Zayin says, Nashim mevarches Birkas Torah. Zok the Bi'alacha. Why? Because think about the reasons. If the reason is Birkas HaMitzvah, L'maisa Nashim are mechuyev to learn. Now, I shouldn't say that in America, but they're mechuyev to learn what they have to know. Okay, it's a vada, the pasuk says, nothing changed. But they have to know what they have to know. Also, the Birkas Hanen and Shaboy, like, why not? So therefore he says, Oy Bazoi could be that Noshim have the same chiyuv, and just like by Kiddush and by Ner Chanukah and Ish Yotzei and Ish, why not this? But then Zok the Be'alacha, and the truth is the emes, the Goyin Shrais Chai V'Kayim and Mechaba. Noshim Chai Birkas Torah. He says the Krokot Sovach L'Mata Meisvus B'neichem. So how do you say Noshim Mevarchos? So the emes Mechaba is not Noshim Mechayavos Mevarchos. Zok the Goyin. The reason why they can say Birkas Torah because Eine Mitzvah V'Oisa is allowed to make a bracha. They make a bracha on Lulav, Shaifa, and Sukkah. So too Birkas Torah. So the Bi'alacha, Oy Bazoi, our idea fell away. If the only Mechayiv and Birkas Torah for Nashim is because they're Eine Mitzvah V'Oisa, but the man is a Mitzvah V'Oisa. So an Isha can be Moitzi another Isha, that's okay, but an Ish Moitzi and Ish is absolutely wrong, and that's Taka the Minig. And the truth is, even if you go with the first reason, that they have to learn the halachis, but it's a very far cry from a mitzvah of Limud HaTorah. Limud HaTorah is the Gismiyam Valayla, and the Amelis, and the Agia, and this Mishas, and this Poiskim. This is a fraction of Limud HaTorah. So both in Eiches and Kamas, an Isha's requirement, so to quote unquote, is not enough to make it that she has arvis for her husband. How about a cotton under my mitzvah? He knows what he's doing. Can he be moitzi, that suffix, that man that's in suffix? So here the Mishmura says with a pashit, avada not. Why not? Pashit, why not? Because he's mechuyev Birkas Torah midaraisa, and the child's only b'derban al chinuch. Oh, the shail is like those rishonim that hold Birkas Torah as d'Rabbanan, so they're on the same page. However, that's not true, because the cotton is two d'Rabbanans. First of all, it's only chinuch, and number two, the whole Birkas Torah is d'Rabbanan. A gadol's chiyav Birkas Torah, if he holds the Rabbanan, it's only one d'Rabbanan. And we have two d'Rabbanans, cannot be moitzi, one d'Rabbanan. And last but not least, this I could use help for this. This is a true story. Someone was up all night. Taka was his wife in the hospital, and Lamaisa, he was worrying about Alois. He was thinking of a fruma. What's he going to do? So just then he saw a yid walking in from a yid. He goes, "Oh, where are you holding?" So the fellow says, "What do you mean?" "I'm sorry. Where are you holding? Did you say Birkas Torah yet?" He goes, "No, I didn't. In fact, I slept." "Oh, please be moitzi me." And he felt like he just won the jackpot. A guy walks in, he walks in. So he said, "Be moitzi me," and he was so happy. Then he chapped, "Oh, what did I do?" He looked at his watch. It was before Alois. So here's my shaila. The person that said it, the Mevarech, was chayev midaraisa and Birkas Torah l'chol hadayis. He slept at night, woke up. Once you wake up, anytime you chayev Birkas Torah. He heard the bracha before Alois. So my shaila is very simple. Is he yotzei with that shmiyah? Shemei koine is valid. But let me ask you a question. Let's say for some reason this suffix person before Alois makes his own Birkas Torah. Is he yotzei with it? Chas v'shalom. It's a bracha v'atola. 3 brachos v'atola. 3 or 2, whatever it is. Because he's made it and is going to Alois. So how could it be that by listening to someone else is better. Now, I understand listening to someone else doesn't risk becoming a bracha of Hatorah, but it's a bracha she'ein by tayeles. You're still holding before your chiv. You have a bracha on your report card. So someone told me, no, this is an amein mitzvah v'oisa. I say, you're making a mistake. Amein mitzvah v'oisa means that you didn't do a mitzvah, you don't have a chiv, but you didn't do a bracha yet, so you're allowed to make a bracha on the mitzvah that you didn't yet do. Because you're doing a mitzvah hamachayeves. But here, you already made Birkas Hatorah. Again, if he would say the bracha, avada, he would not be yotzei. And Taka Reb Shlomo Kluger and Elf Chashleim Simen Lamed Gimel, he says if you want to go with those shitas, that you'll say the bracha by yourself after alois, that's okay. But don't say the bracha before alois hashachar. You're not yotzei even b'diavad. And the Ben Ish Chai in Shana Rishon of Ayishlach Gimel has the same yisoid. So now the shaila is there any way to justify this fellow's understanding? So in that say the Birkas Chassan Amid Reish Samaches, he quotes a Mishnah. He has a lot of bekiyas in Siman Lam Zivkot Yud Gimel, that if someone put on tefillin, he made the Birkas tefillin balayla and put on tefillin by day. He knew how to synchronize the brachos at night and the hanacha was in the morning. Mr. Burra quotes Kiva'egin, Berka Yosef, you yotzei with the bracha. Oh, so what do we see? And pardon me for the word, maybe a bracha can be made in a layaway plan. You make a bracha now, and you take it out when you need it. So no, it's not true. If you look at the Kiva'ega, the reason why you yotzei with that bracha is because we could fall back to the Mi'ikad Din, Laila, is Mantfil. So it's out of right. Good. Then he brings the Mr. Burra, Tafresh Lamatesiv Cotton Chaf Hey. The Bikkur Yankov says, if someone makes the bracha on Sukkah balayla, bein hashmashos, okay, and then sat in the Sukkah, so really he doesn't repeat the bracha, but lamaisa he should sit in the Sukkah balayla because the suffix is yotzei. Oh, you don't have to repeat the bracha. Why? Maybe taka the bracha works even though you're not chayiv. So no, it's not true, because bein hashmashos is a suffix at least. So suffix bracha is the hakol. But our case, before Lois of Adai, he brings a Gilya Mashah, says the same thing. But here's the problem that bothers me. He quotes a tzlach, you're going to look up the tzlach, the Noid Yehuda's tzlach in brachos Yud Aleph, that has this very shaila. Someone was up all night. He has no chiv until Lois l'chol hadayis. After Lois is a Magen Avram, but before Lois nothing. And the tzlach blies by a suffix if l'maisa he made the bracha v'tzchal. And the chiddush, and he quotes the minchas yet the chiddush is that l'maisa he has a chiyuv every moment to learn. So it's not like the sukkah that until night there's no mitzvah or tefillin. Here there's a mitzvah every moment. So maybe the fact that he has a chiyuv bracha later, he could say it now. But he points out, and he said he found a tshuvas zeicha yehoisef, that's such a svara. He's like it because if you have no chiyuv bracha, so how do you make a bracha for later? So Lamaisa, he does point out that B'Tzeil HaChachman Chelik Kuf Samaches also has a tzat that you can be makel on before Alois, for after Alois. So, I don't know, it's a suffix. Maybe it's not enough of a suffix. But one thing I will say, and this is important, for those that Shavuos morning, or whatever it is, that they have a person making the brachos for the oilam, make sure it's after Alois. If he says it a minute before Alois, it's ineffective. People are on a plane, and they don't know when Alois is. So try to find out today. Everybody with a phone, you get the Alois. But if you're not sure, better wait 2 minutes than jump the gun 2 minutes earlier. Because 2 minutes or 1 minute before Alois, you're not yotzei like most paiskim. After Alois, you're allowed to learn a few minutes. So basically, stay away from sveikis, but the ik is, before Alois, nothing should be said. After Alois, you can be making a good talk to you all. I'm getting it.
Shem Agency, you tell like you give a big shakar, Charles Smith for today's share. Have the great success of sponsoring the share. Call Agency Hatorah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshiva.com. Chananya ben Akasha Omer. Was sage ich Baruch le Zak es soll viel geben am Tag mit schnell mal neu hoffen man sieht der Jagd der Viade.
Hey.
Boys have been everyone said Birkas Hatorah, so there's no Shiloh to seek him. Shh.
Let's chazal what we learned today, Bez Hashem. First of all, La'alacha tzarech lizah ma'oid means saying Birkas Hatorah b'kavanah, of course, b'simcha, and of course saying it right away. And again, the starting point is that we always should first say Birkas Hatorah and then learn. It should never be Birkas Hatorah when you get around to it. Al meh of the arts because of that. But Lamaisa, if there's a situation a person for whatever reason can't make Birkas Hatorah, there's no issur to learn before Birkas Hatorah. It's not like Birkas Hanenin. There are 3 types of brachos, but at the end of the day, Chazal never asked learning before Birkas Hatorah. But again, equally true, Tchila is why there was a Churban Abayis. The fact that there's no mention of this issur in any place in Gemara, in Shas, it's 2 separate mitzvahs, 2 separate mekayros. So Yizah Ma'oi Tchila is correct, but if a person is in a situation of suffix, Chalil Levatel Torah because of that suffix. When a person is holding before Birkas Hatorah and someone talks to them and learning, let him apologize, say, I'm sorry, I have to say Birkas Hatorah. And if he feels embarrassed, so next time he won't do it. But Lamais is not a heta to overlook Azar and Lizar B'Ma'oid. Girls or boys that are learning before Birkas Hatorah should make Birkas Hatorah first, of course. Talking to a friar person, if you could get in a Birkas Hatorah, good. If it's going to be in any way provocative or upsetting to him, so then Sheval Tasa Adif, rely on the Ikad Din. Laning before Birkas Hatorah is a problem. You don't walk out, but the laning is listening to a problem. Krishma is much easier because Krishma is labeled as a mitzvah, but laning, the only head would be to ben Gavra L'Gavra, say Asher B'Chabanu, or some of the brachos. Hearing Megillah before Birkas Hatorah, we had a chap that is considered like a halal. It's not limud haTorah. A reach rasha ein ikka, which asses bracha but not learning. Taka learning would be mutter even if you didn't yet say Birkas Hatorah. The Birkas Hatorah is a deraisa. It's a big machlokes rishonim and achrayim, maracha mu maracha. But we could say that if there's a suffix, shemei koina is the best eitzah, and if that doesn't, not shaykh, avarabba is also an eitzah midin hagemara. Someone's up all night and he wants to make a bracha by himself after alois. He has a Magen Avram and the Rav and other poskim to be seimachan. The Bnei Yeshiva followed Mishnah Berurah's psak that better get someone else to be moitziu. If there's no one around, avadim yikidin, he can make at least one bracha misafik. Shavuos morning, there's no issur to learn after alois. You're going to sleep or you're staying up, whatever it is. A few minutes after alois, try to find an eitzah. But if there's no eitzah, you're allowed to learn those few moments. We said an isha cannot be moitzi a man or a katan for that matter. We should never say or listen to Birkas Hatorah before alois, but there is those that are makelas for some reason, we'll leave it as a tzarachian, that better a few minutes after alois than a few minutes before alois. Was? No. That machab is makel, and the girl is machna. But the mini girl is like the machab, and here is makel. Yeah. But here it means there's no deep.
If anybody wants the Luach Hazara, so you may show them. They're available on the bima, or in the box with the schedules.
But the problem is this.